Hollywood Reporter released a list last week of the 44 most powerful players in podcasting in 2025.
Okay.
Not in the history of podcasting, in 2025. And it
see.
says, their description says, whether they're behind the mic or behind the scenes, these trailblazers are steering the maturing medium through an increasingly crowded landscape and critical transitions to video and AI. I thought that part was important because it's true. There's a lot of changes happening throughout the landscape of podcasting, and to say that they're steering and trailblazing through all of that, I think is important.
Oh yeah.
And in the top 10, if I remember correctly, at number 4, if I remember correctly, is none other than our guy, Joe Budden. And so I just wanted to come up here and shout out Joe Budden, who has done a lot of things. And I'll just read a little bit of what they said about him here.
Okay.
It says the Joe Budden podcast. It says a decade after Joe Budden launched his namesake podcast, which actually shows me they don't really know about the Joe Budden podcast, because when it started 10 years ago, it was not called the Joe Budden podcast. But hey, it's okay. It just shows you who's a true fan. Later. That's right. It was called I'll Name This Podcast Later for a very long time. But, it's fine. We just know who's a fan and who's not a fan.
The same strategy, the same brand strategy that they're also talking about, it's inclusive of this, what they're saying. It was that. I mean, the decision to call his podcast the Joe Budden podcast, even though there were other people on the podcast outside of him who were co-hosting with him, was a really smart business move to make sure
he explained that it when he changed it.
Yeah. Sometimes to get ahead, you need to use your resources. He is the resource. He is the name. And
he's the draw.
Right. He was the one who was recognizable. He was the one who's been in the music industry. He is the basis of the credibility for the podcast he has built.
Right. So it says a decade after Joe Budden launched his namesake podcast, it remains the most influential in all of hip hop. The rapper turned media mogul recently revealed that his podcast network is expected to generate more than $20 million in 2025 between subscriptions and ads, making him one of the most successful podcasters in the industry. And what they left out is independently, because a lot of these podcasters are signed to networks, where Joe Budden is not signed to a network.
That's true. Not that there's anything wrong with being signed to a network. I just think there's... Oh, go ahead. I was just going to say it has its pros and its cons on either side. So, yeah, it's a beautiful thing that he can work for himself and he can hire all these people, employ all these people, and still make a profit. I think that's amazing. But then there's also the other side to it where some people don't have the time or the resources to do it themselves, or there's just strength in partnership. So,
and there's nothing wrong with that. I was going to say, I don't think that you need to do one or the other. You got to make the best decision for yourself, your brand, your podcast, your pockets. But I do think there's a distinction that needs to be made between signed to a network versus not signed to a network, because the help and the boost and the push are very different in both worlds.
Yes. And for the record, he's done both.
Yes.
Just for those who don't know.
When asked biggest challenge facing podcasting now, he said, quote, "It's us versus algorithms."
Yeah.
So,
do you know, I'm just curious, do you know anyone else who's on the list? I didn't take a look at the list myself.
I do. And I'd rather not mention the other ones who I do know who are on the list right now. I will tell you off pod why.
Okay.
But shout out to Joe Budden and everyone else who did make the list, whether we're going to mention you or not.
All right.